Right. Hi, Sue.
Hi, Jo.
I am actually going to interview you today.
So do you welcome me onto your podcast?
It's hello, welcome to Pods with
Posh
Pool and Joe. Because it's just me today and you're
Okay.
just the guest. Okay, so we're going to do things a little bit differently today, aren't we? Because normally we've got our lovely guests on, or normally we're just having a chit chat. But I think it's important for our guests to maybe understand a little bit more about us and where we've come from. So today it's all going to be about you, Sue. And, you know, our main message to our listeners is all about adversity, suffering, showing nobody's got perfect lives, but also giving our listeners tools on how to deal with things, isn't it? That's basically our...
So I really am the perfect candidate to interview on the fact that I don't really have a perfect life, because my life has been a bit...
It's been a bit squiffy at times, hasn't it?
has.
But yeah, so, and it's quite, we're going to go dig deep. And if I cry, I apologise, because I'm a bit of a blubberer. So I apologise in advance. So let's go back and tell our listeners a little bit about your biggest time in your life where you had the most suffering.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you've just read my book, haven't you? So my book covers a chapter in my life that was sort of 2003, 2004. So we're looking at 16 years ago. And looking back on it now, it's really interesting because although it was the greatest suffering and conflict and adversity in my life, now it's the greatest chapter I had where I grew.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting, isn't it, how we think about those, because obviously when I was in it, it's very traumatic, and it involved child abduction, having my 3 children taken away aged 1, 3 and 5 while I was pregnant with my 4th. I was 5 weeks pregnant. So I can talk about the trauma of being in it, but I can also talk about the gift of having gone to such a dark place and being able to learn from it and find lessons in it and grow and become who I am today. And obviously we're just growing the whole time, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think now I can honestly look back and say, although I'd never go back into it again, I'm most grateful for that year in my life because of what it's taught me.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be who you are today if it hadn't happened. We know that about our lives, don't we? But
we know it later.
Of course we do.
But not when we're in it.
No, and when we're in it, it is unbearably hard, isn't it? So just to tell our listeners and anybody out there, just go back to the very first moment, the very first experience.
So I was in a marriage that was struggling. Alcohol had a big part to play in it, and I had 4 children in very quick succession. Our early married life was in Singapore, so we'd moved back to England. I think I was struggling with having given up a very high profile career, finding my identity in my title or what I actually did, and then finding myself at home, as many mothers do, feeling slightly trapped in the rain, the winter, not being able to go out, feeling isolated, although I have to say I had lovely friends around. And one day my husband came home from work, collected the 1-year-old from home, said he was going for a walk, collected the 3-year-old from nursery, 5-year-old from school, and just never came home. And they disappeared, called the police, and they said there's child protection issues, which I didn't know what it meant, but basically it meant social workers were involved. And there had been a diagnosis made that I was mentally unwell, mentally ill, and that I was meant to be sectioned. And it was made by a psychiatrist who'd never met me, because my mother-in-law was a social worker. So the whole story unravelled over a year, and long story short, I fought to get the children home through 15 High Court hearings. They were returned home, and on my due date with my 4th child, they were then taken a second time into police cars with blue flashing lights. And it's the story, the book that I wrote tells the story of what it was like to fight for their return, but also what it was like to watch children so traumatised and to go home after court hearings and be told that I'd lost my children, I'd never see them again, and to face 3 empty cots and what that was like, knowing you would never ever see your children again, which is what I was told. Meeting so many psychiatrists, psychologists, I mean, you've been through the court system as well, and having areas of your life dissected and investigated, And what you read in a report, you know is not you, you know is not the truth, or you've given some information away about your history, your background, your family, which has been twisted and misinterpreted, and you don't get a chance in court to actually justify who you are or say that actually when it said this, the real meaning was this, but it's been twisted by a psychologist in court for some report. And what that's like, how terrifying that is, to be a mother of children, to feel your innate instinct is to protect your children. And yet to feel also at the same time you've had all those rights removed from you, cannot, no matter what you do, you cannot protect your children. And what it's like not to be able to get my children home and be in a system where the establishments, the institutions took over my whole life.
And I know you said in your book as well, like, you know, in the criminal court, you are innocent until proven guilty, aren't you? Whereas in the family court, it's very much you are guilty until proven innocent. And I definitely felt like that. I went through a 4-year court battle here in New Zealand, and the judicial systems are very similar, aren't they, here in New Zealand as they are in England. And to me, I came away from the court system actually not really believing in justice anymore. I found it, even though eventually it all came out to be quite fair, but I found, like as you said, people would write things about you, you know, either psychologists, or it might be in an affidavit or somewhere, and it was a total misrepresentation of who you were, and it's so hard to disprove that, isn't it? And it's so, these people who are experts, supposed to be expert witnesses, the court are using their information. It's so dangerous.
It's so dangerous. And I think, you know, my struggle was that all the accusations came against me because of the expert witnesses that hadn't met me, that had written reports of mental illness, and they put it down to borderline personality disorder, which is actually really hard to prove or disprove, because you have to have 6 of 10 criteria or 7 of 10 criteria. But actually, if you read those criteria, it could be that this is a mother suffering postnatal depression or sleepless nights from having had a baby. So it doesn't just translate into borderline personality disorder. But I remember saying, look, all these accusations have come against me. I would actually like to go back to court and say, this is the situation I find myself in terms of an abusive relationship. And I remember my solicitor saying to me, this is not about proving somebody else's guilt or sense of involvement in the situation. This is about proving your innocence, and that's the sole aim. I had to prove my innocence, and I wasn't allowed to say what I was being subjected to at the time.
Yeah.
That was really hard, and I think, yes, I mentioned in the book about the difference between criminal law and family law, and I've been involved in both. I've worked in prisons, and so I've been in criminal court many times, and I felt as though there's a sense of justice with the judge listening and hearing, but also there's a jury. And in family court, there's no jury. It's just about proving your innocence because there's an accusation against you, which is actually very hard to do. And in many situations, I mean, I've since represented men and women in court, but I think certainly when it comes to women, we're very disempowered because we don't have the money, we're not working, we're stuck at home with young children, we can't go out to work. And in my situation, and obviously I can only speak about my situation, my husband had the money so he can employ the good lawyers and the good expert witnesses, and I didn't have access to that.
Yeah. And also, when you're in court, you are there for a really small space of time. Aren't you? So say, you know, you might get like a 2-hour hearing or a half-day hearing or a 3-day hearing. Whatever it is, the amount of time seems so short because there is so much information to unpack and to go through that, and also there's such a discrepancy in maybe what judge you get on the day.
Absolutely.
So you don't know, you know, these should all be people who have highly experienced within their level, with their area of law, yet they're obviously individuals as well with certain views on the world, which definitely comes into their courtroom, doesn't it? And it's terrifying.
Well, and in England as well, I think, I don't know whether it's more so than here, but it's very wrapped up in the class system, and the judges had come from mainly sort of upper middle class aristocracy, so they had private school education, nannies raising their children, and hadn't ever been in my situation where they could actually make a comparison or judge what it was like to be me in my circumstances. That I found really hard. And there was one judge who removed my children from me based on the expert witness who hadn't met me, who summarised to bring the children home and said, you know, it'd gone against the Human Rights Act. It was actually detrimental to children. They were showing signs of bedwetting trauma. The health visitor in the area had summarised to say, bring the children home. And yet he summarised to say, I don't want to change the status quo, so I'm going to, you know, award the father the children. And that to me just was such injustice, that he was actually saying these children are being damaged, but I don't want to change the status quo. And I was the mother of the children. Father was away travelling overseas, wasn't at home even. Beyond that, I think coming back to the witnesses in court that you talk about, we have expert witnesses coming in, but the other thing that shocked me, having never been in court ever, hadn't been to court for a parking fine or anything before, was that the people that knew me and my children, the teachers, the nursery workers, the dentist, the doctor, the milkman, you know, friends, weren't allowed to give evidence in court.
Yeah.
And that really surprised me, actually. So the people that knew the children, knew my relationship with them, knew me personally, weren't allowed to give evidence.
Yeah, because again, it's not like the criminal court. You can't just subpoena people to come in, can you? You can only get them to come in if they've written affidavits or if they're somehow in part of the proceedings.
And also, if you're going to meet an expert witness, invariably, I mean, again, I speak for myself. I went to meet somebody that's doing an assessment. I was in trauma going into the room in the first place. So what I was actually manifesting in that room was trauma, which again could look like mental illness, but it was terror of, I've lost my children, I've got to justify getting them back, I've got to be this perfect person, but I'm actually terrified by the situation and the injustice being dealt me. And I think that's the experience lots of women have, is that there's such a sense of justice that every area of their life is being scrutinised, but they're being met in a very traumatised situation, and not a real situation where your circumstances can present as are. Yeah,
and it's so alien as well, isn't it? Because you've never been in them situations before. Like, I remember we had to have a psychological report done on us because it was a very acrimonious separation. And you go into a room, and I was told I was get to spend 2 hours with this psychologist. She actually interviewed me for 20 minutes. 20 minutes, yet managed to make a huge synopsis and opinion about my entire life and my mental health and why I'd done what I'd done, why I'd left my marriage. And it was all very big sweeping statements, but every question she'd asked me, I tried to answer as honest as I could, even like about things about my childhood and things. But then when I read the opposing report from my ex-husband, his childhood sounded like it was this beautiful, we're all going to skip through the meadow and everything's perfect and rosy. I knew that was not his childhood. I knew his family. I'd known them for 16 years. Don't get me wrong, still a nice childhood. My childhood was nice, but it was not the picture that was painted in that report. So I was like, whoa.
But if you think about any given day, we could both walk into the village today, we could see one friend and they could say, how's your day? And you've just thought about, you had lunch at home with a friend, or you got up this morning and the sun was out and you put the cushions outside and thought, great, today's going to be amazing. And you actually, in your memory, have got that snippet of that piece of information about your day. And so everything's wonderful. 5 minutes later, you might have a memory come into your head about maybe something traumatic from the past. You might feel in a different mood, and that person can say, how's your day? And you might think, I'm actually having a bad day. And it could be 5 minutes apart, so all our days vary, and the experiences we have alter according to what we're thinking as well. So how we present in a given situation one day could be very different to being in that same room being assessed the next day. And I was really aware of that as well, that you're having all your life analysed, scrutinised, investigated, and that you can get a snippet of it, but you don't get the whole picture.
And isn't it amazing, like, did you find as well, because obviously you had various verdicts throughout the year, and then whenever you got like the final verdict and the judge walked in, and you can just get a feeling for certain judges, can't you? Know that they just totally get it. They totally see what is going on. They've totally read through all of the bullshit, they've read through the lies, and they can just totally see it. And you think, what makes them that special person to be able to do that when other people have just, is it because they have got a heart, they have got soul, whereas the other people are maybe just doing a job and crossing I's and crossing T's, the way they don't really go into it with the same kind of compassion? I don't know, because I had similar things happen to me in court as well. Obviously, I'd never had my children abducted, so it's not to that severity. But by golly, I had hideous things happen to me. And I just think the whole system's abusive. But the difference in judges, like, you know,
there has to be an element, I think, that comes into it of being intuitive and being compassionate. And I think I probably had 8 or 9 different judges that I could see straight away were judging me according to what they read about me before they even listened to any of the evidence, and almost like they were going to stamp the piece of paper at the end without listening. And I think the first change came when I'd delivered Martha. She was 2 days old, and I had to have I think the hearing was about 36 hours over a few days, and you know, I shouldn't have been out of hospital yet. I hadn't recovered from the birth. I had to take her into the court, into the High Court. They'd never had a baby in court before. I wasn't meant to take her, but she was breastfeeding. And the first thing the judge said, she looked at my husband and said, "How did Sue get to the hospital? Did you take her? How did she get there? Who was supporting her? Who was by her side?" And immediately I thought, she gets it. There was that immediate relief in me of, gosh, it's somebody that actually understands what I've just given birth to this baby. I've just been through this horrendous traumatic situation. And as I explain in the book, I was told the baby would be taken off me at birth, because at that time the children had gone for the second time, and the courts would say, because you don't have the first 3 children with you, then automatically we have to take the baby. And I was told I wouldn't hold her at birth. What was that actually like, to go through the emotions and deliver a baby knowing you wouldn't hold her, you wouldn't breastfeed her. The social workers were actually at the door. Social workers came in during the delivery several times, and actually the midwife was lovely. You know, she almost said F off to them. This is just not appropriate right now in delivery. But what's that like, to go into court 2 days later holding this baby in your hand that you're terrified you're going to lose because you've lost your 3 other children, and one was a 1-year-old still breastfeeding baby. To have that level of compassion shown, she had a sense of intuition, what was going on. She knew straight away what was going on.
And some people just have more humility, don't they? They have more humility, they have more empathy, and I think they actually do believe in what they're doing, so they really truly believe in the justice of what they're doing, and they're trying to make things right, whereas others are just doing a job. And I think maybe they've become a little bit stale over time as well. By the time they get to being a judge, you know, and they just read it and they just want to fob you off, and but it can't be like that in the family court, can it?
Can't. And you and I are all about heart, and earlier on you said, is it heart connection? I think, you know, today more than ever, we are looking in the workplace, we're looking at family, we're looking at relationships that are authentic and real. And we talk a lot, don't we, about authenticity and being real. And I think today more than ever, we're constantly searching for truth. What is the truth in this situation? I'm sensing this person has said one thing, but I'm feeling something else. And I think today more than ever, what's really important in relationships and in understanding who we are and in growing as a person is to become real, connected with the truth, which is actually today's a bad day and I haven't been very kind today and I need to sort that out. But being really real with what we're facing and feeling. And therefore, if you translate that to the family court, it's that no mother's a perfect mother, and no mother has ever been a perfect mother, and nor will they, or I speak for myself, ever be a perfect mother.
No.
But in the situation I'm in, am I doing the best that I can? Are these children safe? Yes, they are. And are they going to be affected by me being their mother for life? Yes, of course they will. But how do we best support mothers and fathers in situations where they're single parenting?
Yeah, I
struggling.
remember my counsellor once said to me, "You just have to be good enough."
That's exactly right.
And I was quite horrified about that, because I do like to be the best. But actually, it totally, after a while when it actually sunk in, you resonate, because we do strive in life to be perfect at things, but perfect doesn't exist, does it?
No.
There's no such word.
And it's lovely to be given permission just to be doing the best you can. And I remember the children all returned eventually through the court, and I had a newborn baby and 3 very traumatized children manifesting trauma in every way they could. And I would sit there, they didn't sleep at night, they were clinging to me all night. When one was asleep, another one was awake with nightmares, screaming, terrifying. If there was a knock on the doors, they'd go and hide under tables because they thought it was police coming to get them. And I literally had no sleep. And I remember sitting there on the sofa just holding them, thinking I've got to enjoy these beautiful young children, but I couldn't. I was enjoying them as much as I could, but I was so exhausted. And I remember saying to myself, Sue, when you look back on this later, just know that you are doing the utmost you can do in the circumstances that you're in, which is without help, 4 under 5, traumatized children. And my mother passed away, so I didn't have her support. But I think that's the lesson in life, is that no matter your circumstances, when you're struggling, is to know, actually, I am doing the best I can in these circumstances, whatever's going on. Some of you listening will be facing bereavement, loss of a job, change of a career, broken relationship, sickness of a child. And actually, how do we deal with our own emotions, our exhaustion, our tiredness, lack of sleep? We do the best that we can.
I mean, I think your book's beautifully written. You speak beautifully, and your book's beautifully written, and it's so raw and so honest. And you know, obviously, there was no doubt in your mind that you were ever going to stop fighting for your children, because as mothers, when you've got that maternal instinct, you are going to stop at absolutely nothing, are you, to protect your children?
That's right.
Absolutely nothing. So that alone would have given you the drive to continue every day, wouldn't it? But those times when it was dark and you were pregnant and you didn't have your 3 children, what reserves did you go to?
Well, there was a pretty dark time, and I don't write about it in the book, but there was the day that I lost the children, and the judge said, you'll never get them home, you'll never have your children again. And I went back to face their empty cots. I actually left the house and I climbed up a tower block to jump off, because I knew I couldn't live without the children. And then this voice in my head just said to me, you can't kill your unborn child. You just cannot kill your unborn child. And I just knew that I had this life inside me, and I knew that what a gift that was, because I don't know what I would have done if she hadn't been there. So I know what it's like, and I actually now understand suicide, because I didn't want to die, but I didn't know where to put that pain, and it had actually translated into a physical pain in my body, which, you know, many listeners will understand. When you carry such emotional pain, you can't take a paracetamol. I wish I'd had a broken leg and could put it into plaster, or take some morphine, but nothing takes that pain away. And where do you put that pain when you know it's not going to go away? It's an utter desperation to end the pain. It's not that you want to take your life. So it got pretty dark. And at that stage, my younger sister, who was incredible, said, come and move in with us so that you don't have to be at home. And she looked after me. But, you know, I just sobbed at night. Just the pillow was soaked. And then it just took one day for my brother-in-law to come in the room and just say to me, you're going to fight. You're absolutely going to fight. And somebody else's strength then took over. Yeah. Which, again, you and I have talked about how dependent we are on other people, that if you look back on a place of struggle, somebody's always come at the right time just to do the bit that you can't do. Yeah. And that for me was an incredible lesson, and still is with me today, that in the bits that you can't do in life, there's an email, there's a knock on the door, there's a friend, there's a word, there's a smile in the street, there's always something that just keeps you hanging on at that time.
Well, as we say, we're here for connection, aren't we? And in others we do get strength. They do give us strength.
And to know that, you know, each day when you're walking through the streets, those people that might be in road rage, those people that might just give you an evil look in the street, it's not no offence to you, you've done nothing wrong, but it's the pain they carry. And therefore to go back to the offence with a smile could translate their whole day. They could be the one that's just lost their children. They could be the one that's, I don't know, something's happened to their partner, whatever, or facing some diagnosis. You can actually change their day by doing such a small thing, which is compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. Kindness and compassion.
Yeah.
So you got through your darkest time, thankfully. Thankfully you heard that voice in your head. And it's probably your mothering instincts as well taking over, because I know personally, the one time I was suicidal, I had really bad postnatal depression, or depression full stop. And I remember walking down the road with Blue in the pram, and he was little and he's beautiful and smelling gorgeous and just, I remember just got to this one point and I literally just wanted to go and walk into the ocean. Just wanted to go and walk into the ocean and never come out. I was just in this such despair. Pain again, as you say, that physical pain, but emotional pain. And the only one thing that's the reason why I didn't, is because I thought, where's he going to go? What if he doesn't make it back to home to his brothers and sister? What if he doesn't go? What if some strange person comes and takes him and he never makes it back home? And that was what stopped me from doing it. But again, it's that.
And that's a voice in your head, isn't it? Because I had that voice in my head saying, what if there was a 0.001% chance you could get the children home and they could have access to their mother? Do they not deserve that access to their mother? And that voice in my head overrode the feelings that I had to get out of that pain as fast as I could. And thank goodness, because, you know, I did get them home, and we've had not an easy ride in healing from that trauma. It's been a long journey, but it's been a magical journey.
But you talked about like the physical pain as well before, and I think this is an important thing for listeners to understand, because if you are suffering from some physical pain, sometimes that is emotional, isn't it? And a lot of pain is actually emotional pain that we carry around with us that manifests as physical symptoms. And if this is why we've got to address the pain, and we've got to address that healing and grieving process, and it's really painful, isn't it, to do it?
It's so hard. It is so hard. And next week we've got a really exciting guest coming on board who's going to talk about single parenting and actually addressing change within you. And she has a powerful story to tell. But I think to go on that journey, and she and I have been very good friends for a long time, and we made a pact together that we were never going to go back, but we were going to do our work. No matter how hard it got, we were going to address our issues, we were going to grow, and we were going to inspire each other on that journey. But I think that's again where friends are so important, to say you can do this, when you actually say to yourself, I can't do this anymore, I can't fight these battles, I can't struggle anymore, to have a friend there encouraging you on.
You totally
to say
believe in you.
You've said that to me many times, you're going to do this, Sue. And we say it to each other. And how grateful I am for my friends. And as listeners will know, when you're tested, some friends walk away. If it's a divorce situation, lots of friends walk away you think will be there for you, and other friends who you don't necessarily know so well or might think aren't that significant come out and are just rocks for you. And that again is another lesson, isn't it, in life, about who we connect with, why we connect with certain people. But I have to say, even writing the book was a painful thing to do, although I've been on the healing journey. But looking back on it, again, that was just a year of my life, and there's many situations that affect us and change us. But I'm actually more grateful for that year in my life than anything else, but I would never have said it at the time.
No.
Never, ever.
Well, so I think once you've had the possibility of losing your children dangled in front of your face, and yours so obviously dangled in front of your face, you never ever take your children for granted ever again.
No.
You we still get frustrated as a parent, don't we? We still have those hard times as a parent, but you actually really try to be grateful each and every day for it, rather than just always see the hard times, don't you, as well?
And I think that's my experience. I mean, I worked in prisons with women afterwards that lost their children, and obviously have been in the courts in different situations. And my view of life now is that people that have been to severe places of suffering can almost eliminate the things in life that are irrelevant, the titles we carry, the possessions we have, and you almost want to get rid of all that stuff, just to be in the simplicity of the moment, to say, I'm so grateful for what I have. I'm grateful my children that live at home. And even when it gets tough for teenagers, because I had 4 teenagers at once, just saying, okay, well, actually in life's journey, scheme of things, I've got my children with me, and this is part of the journey, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And to let go of that stuff is so freeing. And I think freedom sometimes comes from the letting go of all that periphery stuff that goes on around us. And then just being in the silence of the moment and being in appreciation and gratitude. And you and I talk a lot about gratitude. It's not always easy, is it, to be in gratitude? And we always admit that life is a journey and that life is full of struggle. And it's not one or the other. It's that, life is what it is. And to make a commitment to this is my responsibility, I'll take ownership of it. Where do I want to go, as opposed to putting blame on other people? And I'm actually in a situation now when I'm grateful to my ex-husband, and I want to see him happy, and he's the father of my children. I don't want to disrespect him, and my children's identity comes from him as well. I want them to have a really good relationship together. So I don't feel as though I carry any bitterness, because I'm grateful for who I've become because of it. And
one of the biggest things you've got to do in life anyway is forgive others, because if you don't forgive others, the only person it actually really affects is you with the toxicity, isn't it? And if you can carry around hate or blame, it just affects your soul. It's not affecting them. They don't know you're hating them. They don't feel that hate, or they might if they walk into a room, perhaps, if you really hate them. But in the end of the day, if you can't forgive and move on and leave it in the past, after you've dealt with your healing and your grieving, then you're the only person it would affect. So it's
So true. And also to forgive yourself. So I had to go back and forgive myself for the role that I played in our marriage breakdown, because it's never one person.
Yep.
So what was the role that I played in it? I needed to forgive myself for that and release myself from the guilt and the shame that I hadn't made my marriage work, that I, maybe those things I could have done if I'd have done my work earlier, was mature emotionally as a person, less needy, less expectations on the marriage, then then that's other areas I can grow. When I have another relationship, I don't want to put the same expectations on somebody else that they would meet my needs. I need to meet my needs myself. I need to find self-love. You're huge on self-love. That I was looking for maybe a father figure or somebody to play this role in this package that I had.
Yeah.
But why did I put those expectations on it? Because I wasn't meeting my own needs. I wasn't finding self-love within. And that was a big turning point for me. Who am I without the blame? What's my role? What's my responsibility? And that's, I think, when we start to grow as people. It's not easy though, I have to say. I remember at some of the darkest moments, I'd just be at home alone. In fact, at the early days, didn't even know if my children were dead or alive, didn't know where they were. And just putting music on at night that would drown out my own thoughts of terror and fear, not eating, not sleeping. I had 5 nights of no food and no sleep, and just hoping the music would drown out my own thoughts of terror and fear. And I still remember, in fact, if I hear those songs that played at the time, boy, does that take me back into it. And that's great, because I think, gosh, how many years ago was that? 2003, 16 years ago. That's where I was then. This is where I'm at now, 2 completely different places. Life does change. And for you listeners that are in desperate places, and I utterly know what desperation is, as do you, Joe. Life does change, and it can change in an instant. Just hang on and know that there's something around the corner. There's a bigger picture than one we know. And my sister used to say to me, see, there's a bigger picture, just hang on. Yeah. And there's always that bigger picture we don't fully understand.
Having that faith inside, isn't it? Knowing that you can.
And not trying to work out the answers in your head. How could my children come home when the expert witness has said they won't, and you're mentally ill? And another expert witness has reinforced that, and the judge has said you're not going to. Well, then in your head you're working out, I've lost my children, I'm not going to get them home. Whereas to turn that around and say, I'm actually not mentally ill. I am going to get my children home, and I will find a way. It's the way we express our thoughts.
Absolutely. And I suppose like at the time when somebody's telling you you're mentally ill, there must have been a moment when you thought, God, am I mentally ill?
There was many. And I think any woman going through court, any man going through court, anybody going through court, when you have people dissecting your life and saying things about you that are repeated by the expert witnesses or the courts, then you question it. And certainly I got to the stage of questioning it, because lots of my friends walked away. They'd heard that I'd abused the children, that I was mentally ill. So in the village that we were in London, lots of the young mums who I was really good friends with, they crossed the road so they didn't have to bump into me. And then I started to say, I am mentally ill. I am what they're writing about me, because everybody's seeing it and I'm not. You're deluded. And that was quite scary. When you start to lose your mind and start to think, I've actually now got to believe. Then you need someone else to say, this is not you, so you snap out of it. But of course you'd question it. You would be normal if you didn't.
Yeah. And there's also, as you just said then, about people then turning their back on you. And these people who had been in your house, you'd fed their children dinner, you'd all played together, you'd been to the park together. You had a relationship with these people, yet they were happy to walk across it. Like was there some part of you as well that wanted to run up to them and go, how can you believe this? Why are you doing this to me?
It was hard not to. And I think there was an inner voice that said to me, justice comes in the end, what you sow you reap. And that voice was really powerful. And I remember getting them back through for the first time. And then I had to go back to the village primary school where they'd all been, where the older ones had been. And I remember saying to a girlfriend, how can I walk into the school with the children when everyone knows I'm mentally ill and abusing the children? And she said, you've done nothing wrong. So you go into that school day after day, you hold your head up high, you don't say anything, and you just do it day after day after day. And interestingly then, it took a couple of years, but people then one by one came up to me and just said, we've watched you day after day with those children and we're just so sorry. Justice does come in the end. So if you're in a situation of severe injustice, persecution, false accusation, lies, you don't need to go and tell your side of the story. You don't need, and the whole village had heard from my ex-husband that I was mentally ill. And I thought, I just need to tell them what my marriage has been like, what I've been through. But I also didn't want to dishonour him. But interestingly, they don't need to know the other side of the story. because your truth is your truth. And if you stay in integrity, that's what you're sowing, and that will reap a harvest.
I totally agree.
Later on.
Yeah, my accusations were nowhere near as bad as yours, but there's lots of because we live in a little village here, don't we? Probably very much like you were in England. When I separated, there was tons of rumours, and then people come back. People like to come back and tell you what the rumours are about you as well, and you're like, really? But do you know what? As soon as all my friends turned their back and walked away, as soon as I knew that certain people were talking about me, I did what you did. I held my head up high. I walked around because I knew the truth inside, and I thought, and there would have been the part of me in the past that would have wanted to go and really tell people, because I'm a people pleaser. Oh my, please don't believe that about me. That's not the truth. Please, 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 please. But I thought, this is not the time for me going around grovelling and begging to people right now, because they have already made up their mind. If that is how silly they can be from hearing it from one person after they've known me for so long, well then I don't need to do that. That's not my position.
And we don't need to justify ourselves. If we know, and I knew, I probably couldn't say it at the time or verbalise it, but deep inside I knew who I was, and I knew I was an okay mother doing the best I could in my circumstances, but I knew I hadn't abused my children. I didn't think I was mentally ill or fitted the categories for certain diagnoses. I believed in myself, and I believed I was going to be a good mother raising my children, had potential at least. So it's knowing in your heart. And interestingly, on some of my sites I'm on with the book, people write to me and say, but Sue, nobody believes in me. And I say, well then believe in yourself. It doesn't matter if nobody believes. I believe in you, and I have never met you. I believe in you as a woman. I believe in you as a mother. I believe in you as a person, as a sister, a daughter. So therefore, if I haven't met you, you can say that about yourself. You know yourself better than I know you. Just wake up and say, nobody believes in me, but I do, and I'm going to make it through, and have that inner strength, find it. And even when you can't find it, I remember a great friend of ours, Rachel, said to me, I said, I can't dig any deeper. She said, well then go deeper than that, Sue. Go deeper than you've ever gone before. And I said, Rachel, I can't, it's too painful. I can't find the courage and the strength. She said, Sue, go deeper. You've got to go deeper. You've got no other choice. And I thought, gosh, okay. She's told me to do it, so I've just got to do it.
Yeah, sometimes you just need that voice, don't you? And I should say, sometimes if you don't have a choice, what is the alternative? But just give up. And what does that look like?
Yeah.
What does that actually look like, really? Because I don't know.
Well, I guess then it becomes, addiction or dependency or unhealthy habits, doesn't it? And I know now, I still do carry trauma. I've done a lot of work, and the PTSD generally has gone, but still things will trigger it. And I will try and translate that into something healthy. So I run to get rid of it, listen to loud music, and I go running, and that will get it all out. But it's also acknowledging that, even now, the stuff that I carry that is affecting me, and I've got to be aware of it. And being aware of it is the fact. We've talked again, isn't it? What's the situation you're in? Acknowledge it, be aware of it. Don't run from it, don't hide from it. I've got stuff in me that can be triggered really easily about rejection and abandonment and fear and terror, persecution, false accusations. Compared to where I was in 2003, I'm really excited about where I'm going, but it can be triggered in me, and I've got to be aware of it.
Well, as we said before as well, didn't we, when we were having a chat, everything's about a layer, isn't it? It's like an onion. So you heal this layer, and it goes, but there's another layer underneath, and with each time, it can either be a little bit easier to get over your grief, or sometimes it's that little bit harder because it's triggering something even deeper. So you've just got to accept that there's layers, isn't it? Because you think you've actually moved on from one situation in your life, but actually everything in our life makes us who we are, and they can actually reoccur at any time, can't they?
Absolutely.
And they reoccur at the most strangest times sometimes. You could be thinking that you've got the best thing in life going on right now and everything's rosy, but boom, you've actually got a little bit more grieving to do. And
even for listeners that are thinking, well, I actually haven't been through anything really traumatic, I haven't had my children taken away, it can be, and we work with teenagers, it can be as simple as something our parents said, or a peer, somebody in our peer group said when we were at school, or a teacher said, well, you're no good at French, are you? So you have this spoken over your life, and you think, well, I can't speak French because my teacher told me I couldn't.
Absolutely, because it's those limiting beliefs that we're left with.
We all carry those limiting beliefs because we live in this dysfunctional, not perfect world, and that's how it is, isn't it?
I think, as we say, it's getting it back to basics, learning to love ourselves and knowing that we can.
Definitely.
But you did get your children back.
I did.
Justice was served in the end, and you now have the 4 most beautiful children. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Henry, although I've seen him on FaceTime quite a few times, because he always phones
calls
while we're working. But you know, your other 3 children are an absolute delight, so you must be so proud of them.
I am so proud of them, because it's been a long healing journey, and you know, at the end of the book I say that we moved to New Zealand. We came here for a couple of years, but we're still here 8 years later, and we actually needed at the time to remove ourselves, not from England, because we'd been there for a long time after this happened and lived in a lovely village, but we needed to be removed from the triggers of what was actually, you know, setting off the trauma. So we came here for 2 years, and 8 years later we're still here.
Good.
Henry's gone back to England. He's at university over there and joining the Navy. Lucy's at university over here, currently in Singapore doing an internship for architecture. Louis just like your number 2.
Yeah.
Just finished public exams today, so he's got another year of school, and Martha's got 1 more week before we finish for the summer holiday, because we're New Zealand, Southern Hemisphere school. And they're happy. They have, you know, they have their issues like any other healthy teenage child. But it's been interesting to go on that growth journey of really a lot of emotional intelligence. Who are we? Why are we here? How do we deal with conflict, adversity, learning resilience? I've put my children in tough situations physically, all done the Duke of Edinburgh programmes to, you know, in sport. I haven't rescued them out of situations. I wanted them to find resilience for themselves, because interestingly, I didn't have that as a child.
No.
I had this sort of, you know, not perfect upbringing, but 2 happy parents, where I didn't actually have to learn coping skills.
And then when you did, you did.
So there's no perfect family situation, you know. I could carry guilt for the fact that my children have had such a struggle through their early years. But if I compare it to mine where I didn't have the resilience, they'll have more resilience. There's actually no perfect family situation. The happy, perfect family, or the one that argues, or the one that's divorced, separated, where there's bereavement. Children go on their own journey in their own way.
And I think as long as there's love and acceptance within a family, that's actually what you can base on. That's your foundations, isn't it? Love and acceptance, and then you build everything else from there.
No, and it's wonderful to see them grow, and it's wonderful to see that you can transform your life around. And all of them, I will say, have integrity, and they all know what truth is. And so it's interesting to watch them in situations where they're sensing something might not be truthful. They can work it out and come to and they've learned good communication skills. And I like you think communication is the core foundation for having healthy relationships. And it's not always easy, is it, to put your needs on the table, or your hopes or desires, or your judgments, but actually to have honest communication, to have those conversations. If you're in a relationship and you can't, it's going to be difficult to make a relationship work.
And obviously everything, because of what you went through, has probably made you a better mother. Even though you were doing okay with the situation you were in at the time, you've continued to be a good enough in all the situations you've been in since then. And all the things that you learned throughout that process would have changed you, and hence why your children have such high levels of integrity. Sorry, not integrity. Because
I don't know if better is the word, but different.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how I would have been, but certainly my aspirations were much more towards what house did I live in, what money was my husband earning, what were we going to have, which holidays were we going to have, and obviously that became totally insignificant because I had no money, the house was going to go, I had no husband that could support me. So what became really important was the time we had together, the adventures. So when we came here, we did lots of sailing, we were on the water, swimming, camping, just doing things together and connecting and appreciating each other.
And it's lovely when you get off that rat race of life as well, isn't it? You know, when you're not in that, what are we going to buy next? Now we've got a house, that's made me happy for all of 5.5 minutes, but actually now we're unfulfilled again. Or our base level of happiness has come back down again, so everything seems a little bit mundane. Whereas you and I both have a real appreciation of what is really, really important in life.
And the fact you don't actually need money to buy the things that necessarily you do need, because you and I have struggled to pay school fees and to pay for school trips and everything that sort of comes our way with 4 children each. But to know that when you don't have, there's a level of abundance that's in the universe that comes your way without you having the money. And actually some of the greatest blessings we've had, which has been given someone's holiday house or You know, one of my children was bought a ball dress for the school ball, and the dean offered to pay for her ticket to go to the ball. These incredible blessings that come, that you wouldn't see, the love and the compassion of people and the connection that's made when people can give. People want to give.
Yeah.
And the joy of receiving when you don't have. I remember even once turning up at the petrol station and the person in front just saying, I'll pay for her, and turned around and looked at me and paid for me. And that $100 was going to be a lot of money for me. It was going to cost me the food or the petrol.
Yeah.
It's just wow factor.
I know.
To be connected with having what, you know, for a long time in life we had very, very little, barely enough. You know, we had food parcels at some stages in our lives, but that to me is the greatest gift. Hard at the time, but humbling to realise you need to receive, and that people find it hard to receive. Yeah. But just to say yes. Give me everything.
Yeah, I'll take it now because I need it. Because also you're such a giver in life. You happily give. So it's an energy exchange, isn't it? If you happily give, then we should be open to receiving as well.
Yeah, and learning humility. How do we learn to be humble? One of the ways to learn to be humble is actually to receive, to say, yes, I'd love to receive your gift that you've got for me. Yeah. I can't give, but that is really learning humility and gratitude. Yeah, I mean, the lessons that are in it. But again, when you're in it, it's really tough. I always say black is black, dark is dark, hard is hard, struggle is struggle. You can't make it anything else. There's no rescue remedy when you're in it. There's no quick fix. There's no morphine you can take for the pain. When you're in it, and to the listeners that are listening, when you're in it, it's lonely. It was lonely for me. It was isolating. It was shameful. It was everything crippling that it could have been. And there was no way out of it. And that was the hardest thing. How can I get out quickly? If you're in a situation of a fire and you're being burnt, you can run out of the fire. But when you're in crippling emotional pain, you can't get out of it. And therefore I think, you know, to hear other stories, for me that was something that was really helpful actually. Somebody else might have been through my situation and survived it. Can I survive what I'm going through right now? If it's death of a child, has somebody else lost a child, an infant, and survived it? Has somebody else been paralysed and survived it? Has somebody else lost their job and survived it? So we connect it with people in like-minded situations.
Because we all want that glimmer of hope, don't we?
We want the hope.
Absolutely. And if you see that other people have done stuff, then that glimmer of hope is there within you, isn't it? That little seed has been planted. So you think, you know, you just put one foot in front of the other each and every day, didn't you? And you thought, I'm fighting to get my children back. And you just kept yourself safe as you could to do that.
And that's an amazing word you said, hope, because it's so critical in situations of desperation. And I can remember saying to somebody once, and they said, find the hope. And I said, but I'm in this big black tunnel and there's no light at the end. There's no way out. There is no hope. There's absolutely no hope. I've been told I can't get my children home. I'll never see my children again. All hope is gone. And what do you do in that situation? When somebody's died, there's no hope that that person's going to come back to life. So that is a big one, and was a big one for me. What do you do when there is no hope? Because obviously there's an option of suicide, to opt out of it, but how can you stay alive, fight the pain when all hope is gone? You have to believe, you have to know hope will come. There'll be a way through. There is a bigger picture. And just to be reminded that on this podcast today, there will be a way through it, even if you can't see it. Because the absence of hope is that you can't see a way through it. You can't see the way out of it. But there is always a way. And just have somebody say that there is a way, just wait, it will come. It always does come.
It does. And we know that, but as you say, in the darkest of times, it's really, really hard. And it is, and we're not going to take that away from anybody or anything. It's really hard, but you can get through it.
And I wouldn't swap the person I am today for the person I probably would have become, which would have been, I call it the power, performance, possession culture. You know, tied in with what I had, tied in with what I was doing, tied in by how I was performing. I wouldn't swap it now for the world. And my message would be to just stay on your path. I'm not saying stay in the pain, that's not what I'm saying at all. But sometimes we have to, but stay on your path, stay on your journey, stay walking with just what you know for today. Or even if it's just the minute that you know, just stay in that minute, just do it. Be diligent, persevere, be patient. And, you know, we reap what we sow. And I'm now reaping today the seeds that I sowed then. The seeds I sowed in tears, I'm reaping in joy. And whatever we sow, we reap. But as we go back to the farmer doesn't sow his seeds and reap the same day. There's a season. And that's pretty tough, isn't it, when you have to wait the seasons and you have to go through the rains and the storms and the pests that come to eat your crop and the slugs and...
Because life's going to keep throwing stuff at you, and that's life. But this is why we tell our stories, isn't it? This is why we tell our stories, to inspire other people that are in their dark moments, and that's why we are happier to share our stories. And this is why we do the podcast as well. And look, we had that, when we had like Stephanie Redhead on last week from Brave Girl, that's what she does. She shares stories to help other people, whether they're suffering from cancer, whether they've had the loss of a child. It doesn't matter what the story is, there's an inspiration behind it, isn't there? And there's hope.
And I remember Sam Cawthorne in Sydney saying to both of us, everybody's got a book in them. Everybody's got a story. And you listeners all have one book, if not many, books inside you. You all have a story which is significant, and some people sadly attach their story to shame and guilt and want to bury it away and hide it. But actually, if you can find the courage to expose that story and draw it out, you can find healing in that story to translate you or traject you onto this path of growth and freedom and abundance. But avoid it and you don't go on that incredible journey you can go on, which is hard.
Yeah. And if you avoid your story, it's just, as you say, you're going to continue to carry around shame and guilt when you don't need to. There's no need to carry on. And we're not saying you have to come on a podcast and talk about your story. We're not saying you have to write the book, but address it.
And nobody should carry shame. Nobody. No. Shame is something that cripples, and I've seen that through the journey I've been through and the people I've met. Shame absolutely cripples people, and many people don't know they carry shame. And I didn't realise for a long time I carried shame. Shame of a failed relationship, shame of the accusations made against me, shame of going through the courts, shame of being a single mother was huge. I don't think people realise when you're single parenting, there's so much shame. I didn't make it work. Look at me, I'm on my own. So much shame. Yeah. Let go of it. I'm on my own, that's my circumstances, but I'm proud of the fact I actually raised 4 children and got through each day and released them from home into semi sort of okay, safe, stable, healthy adults. I've done it. Pat on the back.
Absolutely. Good for you.
So I wouldn't change it for the world, but I do now understand much more when I look at people, that whether it's people manifesting rage, anger, hatred, violence, aggression, the root of a lot of that is trauma. The root of that is pain.
Absolutely.
We don't not to judge.
And we don't take it on board as being our issues, do we?
No.
We know it's theirs.
No, and everyone said to us at the time, gosh, we thought you had the perfect family. I had no idea this was going on. I didn't want to tell people before we split that my marriage was shattered and very abusive. I didn't want to betray the marriage. So you can't judge anybody. Nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors. Yes, they thought we had the perfect marriage, but we didn't by any shape or form. And I wasn't a healthy, mature person at the time. I wasn't dealing with life in the way that, maybe I could have done. But now I can take responsibility for that and go on a different journey. So the book is on my website, www.taken2003uk.com. It's on Book Depository, Amazon, all the Amazons, Fish Pond, bookstores.
And it's a great read. I literally read it within a day while lying out in the sun and crying. So yeah, it's a story of tragedy, but it's also a story of triumph in the end. So it does cover up everything. It covers the good, the bad and the ugly. Totally, every day is good, bad and ugly.
And I say, people say, gosh, Sue, you've written this amazing book. I say, actually, I've written everybody's story, really, to various different degrees. And I say it's relative, because if a child in a pushchair has dropped their teddy and the mother's walked down the road and left it and not noticed, and that child's having hysterics, that's relative to what that child's ever been through. So a trauma on a child of losing their teddy bear and seeing it disappear down the street is as great as my trauma or tragedy, because it's all relative to what we've experienced and can cope with at the time. So you can't compare, can you? You can't say, Sue, your book is worse than my story, because everybody's suffering is suffering. Everybody's darkness is dark. Everybody's bleakness is bleak. And I think that's the lesson in life, that just be real, whatever it is. Nothing's worse or better. It's what we do with it. And to be so grateful for our amazing friends, for the life that we have, for the health that we have.
Grateful for lots of things, grateful for just the universe and how beautiful it is and how amazing Mother Nature is, and grateful for the small things in life, because I think what I've found, so when you're grateful for the small things in life, they end up being the really big things that are really important to you. Grateful that the sun shines in the morning, grateful that we can get up and we've got our health and fitness and we can go for a run. they seemed really small things to be grateful for at one stage. They're the things that I don't ever take for granted, and I'm grateful for every day. Grateful for the hugs of my children, grateful for the laughs we share, grateful for the time we spend together. They're all massive to me, and I know they are to you. So
yeah, that's a really good piece of advice, isn't it? That they could seem so insignificant, but when you're suffering and you just notice the little things, actually they can become the really big things.
They are the big things.
Exactly what matters in life. Getting it back into perspective, being back in the simplicity of the moment, in the joy of the now. Might not be tomorrow. Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow, but the present moment, the today, the podcast we're recording right now, the joy of being with you, and we love what we do, don't we?
We love it.
And we just had an amazing podcast with an interesting chap come on board, tell stories, fascinating, and just to be in the moment and love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for talking so honestly and about something in your past which changed you and made you the person you are today, which is lovely and gorgeous and divine and giving. So thank you very much, and we'll be here again soon, won't we?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because the first podcast we ever did, I said, welcome, Jo. Welcome on board, as though you were my guest. So now it's turned around, hasn't it? So now I'm your guest, which is, you've been waiting for this moment, haven't you?
Oh,
I'd be your guest on your podcast.
Yeah, actually, I think I'm just going to rename the whole podcast, but yeah, that's okay.
Well, you could always edit this, because you edit, don't you? So you
Yeah.
do all the editing. You could always edit me out.
And just have it all about me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Jo.
Thank you.
Bless you.